Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer number LB4361-400-604. This is a 4x4 single-acting spring hinge, full mortise, residential weight, lube bearing, steel-based, and zinc-plated dichromate sealed hinge. That's what this is. This is a spring hinge from Bommer, is what it is first and foremost, and has a little bit of oil on it from manufacturing. So the LB, let's dissect the part number. The LB means that it is lube bearing. It's a maintenance-free sort of construction of hinge from Bommer. Maintenance-free concealed bearing is what that really means. The 4361 now, that's very specific. That means that this is a hinge that is compliant with use for doors that are by a manufacturer called Castlegate. And what that exactly refers to is the height, the width, the treatment of the corners, and the specific locations of the screw holes. There is a link below this video to the template which shows everything important dimensionally about the item. So it's crucial that you review that before purchasing the hinge to accurately determine, do you have a Castlegate, and therefore do you have an LB, do you need a 4361 pattern, because it's that part number that changes with all of the different spring hinges that Bommer manufactures. The 400 in the part number means that this hinge is 4 inch tall and 4 inch wide. Okay. The 604 means that it is zinc plated. Zinc plated dichromate seal, that is a corrosion resistant sort of finish that you're going to have, and as you were able to see there on the camera, it gives a yellowish sort of tone or tint, but that's specifically, some people will even call that brass, and it certainly looks like brass, but that's zinc coated and dichromate sealed is what that is. So a really good option when you're looking to, keep the corrosion, the degradation of the finish, tamped down as much as possible. Zinc is a good option for an exterior outswinging door. Now back to that template. There is, on that template, it shows you that you've got a square corner with a 5/8 radius, and then again the locations of the screw holes. This is 96 thousandths of an inch thick, so that's typical for residential weight doors. And again, that 4361 identifies all of the physical features of this hinge as this hinge. Now, there is a video below this video called How to Identify the Spring Hinge that you have, and it will take you through the steps by which you will start with having a residential door and you need a replacement spring hinge, and that video helps assist through the steps to determine which hinge you have. If you've arrived at the 4361, well then there you go. Okay, so what is this hinge? Well, it's full mortise. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaves here that it is a full mortise hinge, meaning that the leaves are meant to be flush with the edge of the door and frame when they're brought parallel. It is UL listed for use on fire doors, and it's not most common that you would have this installed on a fire-rated door, but you could. You might have an attached garage door to an attached garage, and that's very likely a 20-minute door. So you would certainly need something that would be rated for a fire-rated door. This is considered grade 1, meaning that it is has been tested to at least 1 million cycles. It's completely non-handed. You can take it, you can turn it over. It will work any which way, and we'll get to the installation instructions in a moment. Self-lubricating, that means that's the LB part of the part number. Self-lubricating, maintenance-free, easily adjustable spring tension, we'll get to that in a moment. Special template hole pattern, that's the 4361 part per the template. Designed to fit in Castlegate. Pivot point aligns with residential butt hinges that are between 85 thousandths and 109 thousandths thick. So what that means is you could have this door and you wouldn't need 3 spring hinges because the weight of the door doesn't justify it. the weight and size. What they're saying is you could use a standard hinge as well if you have that already. We don't sell standard hinges, at least not currently, that would be this specific pattern. But the pivot point, the vertical axis of pivot, is compatible with other hinges. You can mix and match, is what the short version is of that. Made of steel, and that's in the 604 part of the part number as well. That means the two things, the zinc dichromate seal and the fact that it's made of steel. Okay. 5/8 radius on one end, that's a 5/8 radius corner, and that's a square corner, obviously. 96 thousandths, we discussed that. Screws are included. You're going to get all wood screws and all metal screws. 10 by 3/4 are the wood screws. 10/24 by 1/2 inch are the metal screws. Recommended for doors up to 3 foot by 7 foot tall. 85-pound doors, you would go with 2 spring hinges, and really above that would be 3 spring hinges. Now, I'm a fan of all spring hinges, all the time, for every door. If you're going to use a spring hinge, get all spring hinges, and it's not for the obvious reason. The reason that I am is I have found over years of installing, correcting, setting, replacing installations with spring hinges, I have determined that you get a greater amount of predictable and reliable door operation when you have more spring hinges doing the job. So when you've got the spring tension set, and we'll get to that in a moment, and you open the door, the spring hinge has to overcome the fact that the door is at a state of having no motion to it. The spring tension has to get the door moving, the weight of the door, the width of the door, the height of the door. The spring tension has to overcome all the air resistance that it will encounter. It has to overcome the friction of the latch bolt hitting the strike plate. It has to overcome all the ambient air pressure condition that is present at the time the door is closing. And it has to do it in such a way that the door closes all the time without slamming or getting the door to the point where it's almost closed. When you have less spring hinges rather than more, you'll find that you have to typically set the spring tension much higher so that the door kind of slams just to get it closed, because setting it back a little bit will seem not to get it to predictably and reliably latch all the time. I liken it to a tugboat. They don't go very fast, but they can pull a lot of weight. And the more spring hinges you have means the more stored energy you have on command at that moment when the door is going to begin its closing cycle. And then you can tailor the setting, which we'll get to, on the spring hinge to best adapt to the current conditions. And conditions will change. Another reason for more spring hinges. How you might set the front door, let's say it's a 3-flat condo building, or just a 3-flat, or a 6-flat, common entrance. What you might have it set to in the summer is very different than the winter. You might have, the spring tension needing to be such because you'll have different air pressure conditions in the winter. There'll be windows and doors all closed up. You might need a little bit, less spring tension to get the door to close. In the summertime, you'll have different conditions. The point of all of that is having more spring hinge on reserve that you can set and tailor will give you a more predictable and reliable sort of door operation. The hinges are very inexpensive in my opinion. And clients will call and say, yeah, I need 3 hinges for my castle gate. Okay, 4361. Well, do you have the regular hinge? And we don't. We don't sell hinges for Peachtree or castle gate. You'd buy those from the manufacturer. And oftentimes what a client will come to in terms of the conclusion is, well, just give me all 3 spring hinges, because it's easier just to fill or hang that door with those as well, not only for the reasons laid out earlier. So the installation instructions. Basically, you're going to install this hinge like you would any other hinge. There'll be no tension set at all. Now, how to set the tension is very simple. In this example, with the tension collar, and you'll notice that there's a collar here, and there's not one here. With this pointed up, you'll always turn that clockwise. Okay? So you'll rotate that clockwise with the included tension rod, this black piece of steel. And as you turn the tension rod, the tension collar with the tension rod, you will reveal new additional holes. And it's into one of those new additional holes that you will insert the tension pin, and that's the silver pin that's in there. 3 holes maximum tension is what they recommend. There is a link below this video to these exact instructions. And it's half of the possibility that you're going to have to install it this way, you would simply turn it counterclockwise if your door was of that hand, okay? And that's it. Spring hinges start at the top, middle, then bottom in terms of how those are installed, and is a very common way for residential doors to be closed. Now, I'm not a fan of spring hinges because I know that they don't control the door properly. And if it's a fire-rated door, the door must be 2 things. It must be self-latching and it must be self-closing. And if the closing item that you're using, the spring hinge, doesn't accomplish that, well, then you no longer have a fire-rated door. I would prefer hydraulic control, like an overhead closer or an overhead concealed closer, maybe a floor closer. But the truth of the matter is that's just not possible on residential or many applications of doors. And a spring hinge is the only way to get the door to close. And while it, in my opinion, is less elegant, it is the only solution, so therefore that's why it's used. So that link to the installation instructions, they're there pre-purchase, post-purchase. They are also going to be included with your, should your hinge order come in a box, they'll be printed on the box. It's not likely that your order will ship to you and not in a box, but it's certainly possible. But not to worry, because you have those installation instructions printed there for your review. The rest of the box gives other information in terms of the guidelines by which and when you would use so many spring hinges. Depending on the size of the hinge, the weight of the hinge, it will tell you how many spring hinges. So the instructions on the box apply to just more than this 4-inch spring hinge by Bommer. Now, the name Bommer is synonymous with all things spring hinge related, and the last thing I'd like to show you is the Bommer logo. And right above it, it says Made in USA. That's a fact that Bommer is quite proud of, as am I to represent them. If you have any questions on the Bommer LB4361-400 in a 604 finish or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.